I'm going to read a little bit about the process that we're going to be doing today. We're going to be asking questions, and we're going to be rotating the opportunity to answer them. Our candidates are sitting in alphabetical order from your left to the right. The first question will be posed initially to candidate Allen, whose last name begins with A, and then answered by the remaining candidates from left to right. The second question will be posed initially to candidate Carlstrom and then answered by the remaining candidates from left to right, with candidate Allen answering last. The third question will be posed initially to candidate Conti and then answered by the remaining candidates, with candidates Allen and Carlstrom answering last. This rotating process will be followed for the remaining questions. Okay, opening statement. So we'll start again with the left to right.
Great. Let me know if you can't hear me in the back. I was born and raised here in Marin County, so I think I'm uniquely qualified to understand what the issues are of the people here. My name is Gregory Allen, and I'm running for State Assembly here in District 10. I lived my whole life here, except for the time that I honorably served in the United States Air Force. That's where I met my beautiful wife, Paula, is here in the back. Together, we put together businesses. We had upwards of, well, we primarily focused on high-tech recruiting businesses, focused on software and internet companies. So we worked with engineers and executive staff within those companies. And we've had upwards of 15 recruiters on site with another 9 people that worked in research and candidate development in our offices in Marin. I've also been involved with the community as well. I coached high school football at Drake High School here for a year, and then I also was involved with youth baseball, basketball, and football for the remaining, the next 12 years after that. I'm involved in this right now because I think that Proposition 13 is under jeopardy in the State Assembly and in the legislature. Right now, the way it stands, basically, Proposition 13 was passed in 1978 and was voted in by the California voters, and it was upheld by the United States Supreme Court. And it basically means that no Californians should be taxed out of their homes. What's happening right now is there's a number of bills that are in the Senate and Assembly that are going to weaken the 2/3 majority required in order to raise your taxes. One that's of most concern to me and most people would be ACA number 8. That's Assembly Constitutional Amendment number 8. That was just passed. Actually, sorry, I'll get back into it again. Thank you.
Oh, it's time to move on to the next candidate.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Erin Karlstrom. I'm running to represent you in the State Assembly. I'm running to be a leader in Sacramento on issues that matter to all of us. Funding for our public schools, the health of our community, the robustness of our economy, and of course, protecting our environment. I grew up in California, the daughter of a nurse and a mechanic. As a public high school student, I had the opportunity to attend Yale University, where I worked 3 jobs to make sure I could pay for books and get home at the end of the term. Put myself through law school afterwards and became an attorney here in the North Bay, opening up my business in Santa Rosa, where I've been a business and estate planning attorney. I serve on the Santa Rosa City Council. In my role there on the council, I've been an advocate for green local power generation, our plastic bag ban, making the roads safer for pedestrians by passing a vulnerable users ordinance, advocating for living wage through community impact reports and project labor agreements, and of course finding ways to creatively fund our local schools. I'll take those priorities with me to Sacramento by expanding our funding into our public K-12 schools and expanding into preschool and child care years. I will fight for single-payer health care, and I will fight to ban fracking and protect our coast by implementing offshore oil extraction fees and working to find a more sustainable water solution for all of our needs. I would be honored to have your support. I am supported by the California Teachers Association, the California Nurses Association, and local firefighters. Again, I'm Erin Karlstrom.
And now we have Diona Conte.
Hi, I'm Diona Conte, and I'm running because there's too much at stake in California to accept the status quo. We need bold action and a commitment to getting it right for everyone, not just those who can afford to make big campaign contributions. There's a lot to be done. I'll start with reinvesting in education, roll back the fee increases at public colleges, protecting the environment, get a full ban on fracking, and pass the oil extraction tax. get affordable health care through single-payer Medicare for all, and add back to the safety net so we prevent costlier problems down the road. And we need to get corruption out of Sacramento. No crimes, no bribes, no loopholes, and no secret money. We need to pass the Disclose Act and get public campaign financing. People say these measures would be wonderful to have, maybe impossible to get. I don't agree. It just takes not giving up. In my 30-year career as a nonprofit CEO, I've taken on many issues thought to be impossible to get at the time, like getting people to stop smoking, pass smoke-free ordinances, or stop drinking and driving. I have been a two-term trustee on the College of Marin, where I've been a pragmatic problem solver. I was also president of the Canal Community Alliance Board, and I've been endorsed by the Sonoma County Political Action Committee, Sonoma County Latino Democratic Club Political Action Committee. I have the background and the track record to make this agenda a reality. Thank you.
And I just want to acknowledge that we invited Veronica Ronnie Jacoby, and the person is the candidate running for assembly is not here. But we're going to move on to Marc Levine, who's the incumbent.
Thank you. I'm Assemblymember Marc Levine. It's been a real privilege to represent Marin and Sonoma in the State Assembly this session. We've shown how a Democratic supermajority can get things done. Fortunately, we were able to pass an increase to the state's minimum wage. It's not enough, but it's a great start. We were also able to make sure that undocumented immigrants can get a driver's license and be able to drive safely without the worry of being pulled over and arrested. We're able to have protections for workers so that if they whistleblow on their employers, it is now illegal for their employers to go to the ICE to call them and have them deported if they're not here legally. So we're able to make that illegal and make sure that retaliation is illegal. I found out after the session that I have a 100% voting record with the Legislative Latino Caucus, for which I'm very proud, and am endorsed by Congressman Jared Huffman, as well as 12 local mayors from our town and city councils. Again, it's been a wonderful opportunity to serve. What I'm trying to do is make sure that on any piece of legislation, we're looking at what's in the best public policy, not just what's the easiest to pass, but to make sure that it actually works. Hopefully that means long-term, California won't be in the place that it's been the past 5 years, where we've had to make terrible cuts to things that we care so much about. And that's why I've really dedicated this year and the work on the budget to make sure that Prop 30 revenue goes to our K-12 schools, that we're able to pass the middle class scholarship to make college affordable for everyone, and look forward to doing much more of that work in the years to come. Thank you very much. And I also want to just quickly apologize, as I have a commitment in Santa Rosa this evening, and I have to jump into the traffic on the 101 and won't be able to stay the entirety of today.
Okay, so we'll start, as we said, left to right. We'll start with candidate Allen, and we're going to just ask the questions in English and Spanish. We know that the candidates will be answering in English. ¿Cuál es su opinión acerca de los fondos que son contribuidos por las corporaciones para influenciar las leyes legislativas a nivel estatal? ¿Y qué usted haría para parar el dinero en la política? What do you think of corporate funds influencing decision-making at the state legislature level? And what would you do to stop money in politics?
Let me start by saying that I have zero money from corporate interest or special interest. I've not taken $1 from any of those type of organizations or corporations. I think it's important that we understand where that money is going, which candidates have been funded in that way, and what they might be responsible for in doing that. Obviously, you're responsible for what you take in, because that's an association that you're going to have with those people. So I think it's important that we do look into that, and I highly recommend that everybody look into all candidates on this in this race to see what their position is. I wanted to also, unfortunately, I didn't get through my my opening with you. I want to let you know that I'm the only candidate in this campaign that's been endorsed by Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association for my defense of Proposition 13. I'm also the only candidate who has signed the pledge for sustainable. Let me get the right word for this.
Pensions.
Yes, pledge for sustainable pension plans. And again, I'm the only one, I believe, that has signed that. So again, I think it's important that we understand where the money is coming from, where the responsibility will be for those candidates going forward. I think it's okay if we're going to collect money from corporations, but we need to be wide open to the public about where it's coming from and what our responsibilities will be going forward with that. So again, I have $0 that I've collected from corporate interests.
And we would like to hear the same from the answer to the question from candidate Carlstrom.
Thank you. It's a really great question. It really speaks to the problems that we are having in getting truthful, brave, and bold leadership in Sacramento. The impact that corporate money has on decision making is indisputed. What I have proposed and have been an advocate for a very long time is public financing of campaigns. That is a surefire way to at least limit the impact that corporate donors have on the legislative process, on the electoral process. And what it does is fund a candidate for their campaign after that candidate has established a minimum level of competency, either by collecting a certain number of signatures or by getting a certain number of small dollar donations to prove that they have connection to their district, support from within that district, and are a legitimate candidate who deserves to be supported by the public in their race to represent their district. So I would love to see California move in that direction towards meaningful campaign public financing. The Disclose Act is something that I'm very much in support of. We have to know where funding is coming from, because that tells you, as Mr. Allen mentioned, it tells you who that candidate associates with. Are they associating with Walmart? Are they associating with Monsanto? Or are they associating with local businesses? And I think that's where we need to dig down deep and see where people are getting their funding from. We also need to talk about the very real situation where candidates are able to self-finance. We don't have a mechanism for stopping someone, for example, from running if they can finance the whole campaign. They're not establishing connection with that district. So it's a very robust discussion, but putting forward public financing is stop number one.
And now we have the same question for candidate Conti.
Well, it's really clear to me throughout this campaign, it's not like I didn't know this before, but I really know it now, that the name of the game in Sacramento is the people with the biggest stack of money get their priorities met, and those without a stack of money do not. It's very clear to me that corporations in particular have many venues to influence the legislature. I'm proud that more than 85% of my donors are all individuals from both Marin and Sonoma County. The rest is coming from SEIU, from a public employee union. And I'm proud to have their support in that way. As I said in my opening, we need to get the influence of big corporate money out of Sacramento. So the Disclose Act, as I said previously, is important. It's important then to also move at the national level to overturn Citizens United. And the only thing that's really going to make a huge difference is getting public campaign financing. It's my priority, and really one of the main reasons I'm running, is to make sure this state works for everyone, regardless of income level, special need, or any demographic. This state is supposed to work for everybody, not just those who can afford to make big campaign contributions, not just those who have a lot of means. This needs to work for everybody, and if we take care of all of those people in our community, it's going to be better for everyone. I've spent my entire career, more than 30 years, working with programs that help people and make people thrive. We know what's needed. We know how to make it happen so everybody has equal opportunity and an equal voice, but we are not honoring that priority. And we have balanced the budget on the backs of those not most in need, and that's not okay. That's the reason I'm running. We need to change that. I will get in there to make sure that happens. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're moving on to the next question. Los estudiantes de secundaria bachiller nominan en el rango más bajo en el desempeño de los estudiantes entre muchos estados. ¿Cuál rol usted cree que la legislatura debe tener continuamente para lidiar con ese problema? California high school students rank lower than many states in student performance. What do you see as the ongoing role for the legislature in addressing this problem?
It's It's a great question, once again. And thank you for giving us 2 minutes to respond, by the way.
That's a luxury.
I really appreciate
That's
it.
a luxury.
We know that, primarily we know that California ranks last in per pupil spending in the country. It's a huge problem. Mississippi spends more per student than we do in our public schools. We need to begin there. There are a number of ways that I'd like to see us go about financing that. The first is, I actually believe we do need to reform Proposition 13. We need to implement a split roll approach that will require corporate property holders to be subject to regular reassessment and pay their fair share into our tax coffers, which go to fund our schools. Secondly, Senator Noreen Evans has proposed an offshore oil extraction tax. I am waiting with bated breath in the hopes that that will pass. It's projected to generate $2 billion in revenue, which will be earmarked for health and human services, education, and our parks. I think that's a great start. Thankfully, the voters passed Proposition 30 2 years ago. We need to work to renew that before it expires. And we need to be watching very carefully as the legislature moves to make it easier for corporate charter schools to operate using public tax dollars. They aren't subject to the same type of review. They don't have to have the same type of quality control. And quite frankly, they're for-profit educational institutions. They're not looking out for the best interests of the public. So we need to begin with that funding. We know our teachers are strapped. We do have local control coming on board, which is going to allow communities to better assess the needs for their schools, the students that have higher needs. And I very much support initiatives like that to really empower our students. Before my time runs out, I want to talk about the programs that I'd like to see us funding, which are early childhood, the Strong Start and Universal Kindergarten programs, which are going to set our kids up to be able to perform at a higher level later on.
And I didn't say your name, but that was candidate Carlstrom. So if
Thank you.
you don't hear your name, if you can say it for us, that would be great. So we go to candidate Conti on the same question of California high school students rank lower than many states in student performance. What do you see as the ongoing role of the legislature in addressing this problem?
Yeah, so I will say out loud again, I'm Diona Conte, and as I said in my opening, reinvesting in education is a top priority. We cannot continue to ignore this need. It's our future. We have made it very difficult for students to get any kind of higher education unless they have a lot of means, and even families that have more money are having a hard time doing that. So the fee increases at community colleges were increased from $26 a unit to $46 a unit over the course of just a couple of years. A lot of people who are working their way through school find that really, really difficult to afford, and if they can't afford it, it's taking them a very long time to get through. 80% of new jobs are requiring college degrees. If we don't have accessible, affordable education, how are people going to get good jobs with living wages? That's really not going to work. And we have to reinvest in education at all levels, from K through 12 all the way up. It's not okay to have this not be a priority. We also have to pay attention to everything that's needed in education. We have to pull together the communities. We have to get the support and build the political will and the public support to get the increased revenue that's going to be needed. And so we're going to do that by passing in the oil extraction tax, by closing the loopholes in Prop 13, and we'll also need to go back to the voters and ask them to reinvest again and re-up Prop 30. It stopped the hemorrhaging, but it did not add back what was needed. It just stopped the bleeding. There's a lot that's underfunded in the educational system. It's not okay. It needs to be a priority.
So we go to candidate Allen.
I'm Gregory Allen. Actually, education is a #1 priority because that's our future. These are the people that are going to be responsible for building businesses here, working, doing all the things. They're the taxpayers of the future. So we got to be very, very good at helping them get through the education system. My wife Paul and I are pretty proud of the fact that both of our kids, and Dina is now 29, and our son Greg Jr. is 25. They both have just gone through. They've got college degrees from the UC system. It's a difficult process because they're not able to always get the classes they need for those 4-year degrees. So it usually takes a little bit longer than 4 years if you are fortunate enough to go to university. The thing that struck me was that only 60 cents of every dollar spent on education gets to the classroom. And I firmly believe that there's other ways that we can find to help the principals and have the teachers get more flexibility in spending that money, helping students learn in different ways. Not everybody learns the same way, so we need to have some flexibility in the classroom to help those students be able to achieve the things that they need to do and be successful. So I firmly believe that the charter schools are having a great deal of success right now, especially in their math and science testing. And for me, as a technical recruiter, I can tell you, it's very difficult for us to find people in the United States that are engineers. So we have to bring people in from outside the country in order to support us and to fill these jobs. So it's important for us to get the kids involved, especially in technology in the K through 12 levels. They really love the video games. They can get involved and start to program a little bit and know how these things work. That'll help them get into these tech jobs that are well paying, and they're going to be a very good future for them going forward. So I think it's critical that we start to make an adaptation to what we're doing. Again, nobody learns the same way. My son and I have a kind of a different type of philosophy. I watched this kid have 99s on all of the state tests, and then when he goes in to take a test on math, they're docking him because he doesn't show his work. He can get the answer like that, but he couldn't show his work, so they would give him a bad grade. Another example of why people learn differently. So again, that flexibility at the classroom level is critical, and that's the only way we're going to turn it around.
Now we'll go to the next question. This is related to employment. En esta época del alto desempleo y crisis presupuestarial, ¿cuáles cree que son los pasos más importantes que deben tomarse para mejorar nuestra economía en California y el sostenimiento de la creación de trabajos? In this time of high unemployment and budget deficits, what are the most important steps that you should be taking to improve our California's economies and sustain job creation? And we'll start with Diona Conte.
I'm glad that the legislature passed the minimum wage, but it didn't go nearly far enough. We really need to take a look at living wages. There needs to be a higher floor to wages. It's obvious that people in the Bay Area and people in this district and people throughout a lot of California cannot afford to live where they work. That's not okay. We're going to have to take a look at that. We're going to have to look at ways to stimulate job creation, green jobs, high-tech jobs, more in the service industry, hospitality industry. Those are all things that we need to take a look at, especially in terms of green jobs and incentivizing innovation. We're going to need to take a look at that. But in the meantime, the most important thing is that we focus on living wages. It's about time we made this state work for everybody, and living wages is a great place to start with that.
So we have a question now for Gregory Allen.
Again, I'm Gregory Allen. I think that all of us that watch TV will be aware of the fact that Texas and New York are doing a really good job at recruiting companies away from California. There's a reason that we need to stop taxing these companies out of existence here. They're just going to pack up and leave, take their jobs with them. They're going to take that tax base with them as well. So it's important for us to try to find ways to reverse that trend. We need to be stealing companies from Texas and from New York. Those are great places to live, but not nearly as great a place as this is. So I think it's important that we find ways to move them here. I also think that being part of a technical recruiting field that I'm in, I'm dealing with engineers and internet and software companies. These are the types of companies that need to start to move up to the North Bay. Silicon Valley is losing real estate. There's nowhere else for these companies to expand. This is a great place. We have the infrastructure is fantastic, really smart people, and we can educate people on the jobs that they need to perform within these companies. So it's going to be my focus to get those engineers, get those executives to understand what we have here. We started this trend back a few years ago with Telecom Alley in Petaluma, but it kind of died away when the economy slowed down. So I think it's really important that we understand that because of the way that we tax these companies and the regulations that we put on them, they leave, and they're leaving in droves. We just lost 5,000 jobs from Toyota. They're going to move from Southern California to Arizona. We can't let that happen. This is absolutely ridiculous. So I think it's important that you understand, I know the people to talk to. I know the venture capitalists. I know the executives in Silicon Valley, and I'm going to make every play possible to bring them to the North Bay.
So for Erin Karrstrom, we have the same question. In this time of high unemployment and budget deficits, What are the most important steps that should be taken to improve our California's economy, and sustain job creation?
Pienso que es importante decir que yo hablo un poquito de español, pero estoy un poquito rusty, así yo puedo entender sus preguntas, pero voy a responder en inglés. Espero que está bien. In Santa Rosa, we are facing this challenge. I'm on the city council there, and we have an aging population. And they're going to be demanding services, they're going to be needing services, but we also have to backfill that with working families that are putting their kids through school, paying into our tax rolls, driving our buses, paving the streets, teaching our students. So we have to be attracting those families that are going to want to live and work here in the North Bay. Marin and Sonoma County are extraordinarily expensive places to live. A family of 4 in Marin County has to earn over $100,000 annually, really just to meet basic needs, housing, transportation, electric utility, things like that. That's an exorbitant amount of money, and you're not going to make it, frankly, at $10 an hour, even if you're working 2 jobs, both parents, if there are 2 parents. We need to be really addressing our minimum wage. In Santa Rosa, that's why I've been an advocate for things like our living wage, for project labor agreements that guarantee a living wage will be paid for public works projects. I've also been an advocate for community impact reports, which are reports that when a big corporation like Walmart wants to come into the community, we know that studies have shown that they will decimate every small company within a 10-mile radius of them. But they might comply with your zoning or general plan. A community impact report would allow you to take a real look at the actual community impact that that project will have as far as destruction of your environment, utilizing an overdependence on public services, decimating those other local businesses. That's why I have the support from so many labor groups and who represent working families here in the district.
Now we're going to move to a question about the leadership role that we have here in California related to immigration. California ha tomado liderazgo en desarrollar leyes que benefician a los inmigrantes. ¿Cuáles, si es que hubiese, cambios en la legislación o leyes usted podría apoyar? California has taken a leadership role in immigration reform. What, if any, changes to legislation or policy would you support? And we'll start with Gregory Allen.
Yeah, we've definitely got a major problem in the United States, undocumented workers. That's an issue that's happened here a couple of different times in our history. I don't think many people realize that a great percentage of the people who are undocumented are students that have come here on F1 visas to study in our universities, yet they've never stepped foot in those universities, and the government does not track them. So we unfortunately put the focus on the people that obviously are seen, and this is a group that probably 40%, at least 40% is going to be of them are the undocumented. I think it's important that we find ways to get people in line, get them legal. I don't think we want to necessarily put them to the front of the line and put the people that have gone through the process legally. You don't want to put them that way, but we do want to find ways to get them documented, get them on the tax rolls, get them legal so that they can contribute to society and be able to come out of the shadows. That's critical as well. So again, I think it's one of those things that if you look back over history, we've done a poor job before. I think that Ronald Reagan tried to do it back in the 80s, did a better job. Right now, we need to focus on it. We need a bipartisan effort to try to find out exactly what numbers are out there and what can we do to get them legal. So it's a very difficult issue. It's one that pulls on your heartstrings. It's difficult in a lot of ways, but I don't think we'd be a very solid nation if we let people that have come here illegally jump to the front of the line. So they're going to have to pay some type of penalty, whether it's time or some type of money, in order to get that legal standing that they need to get that green card, so they can work wherever they want.
And the same question for Erin Karrstrom.
Somos todos inmigrantes. We are all immigrants. I have been a long-standing supporter of sustainable, comprehensive immigration reform. I support the DREAM Act for our students. I'm so grateful to the leadership in Sacramento that have pushed this forward in California. I began my career in politics doing door-to-door voter registration in Latino and Black neighborhoods in Arizona, encouraging them to engage in the political process, to become fully participating citizens. I want to talk a little bit about the work that I've done in Santa Rosa as well, in franchising our Latino population. We know that we have a community in Santa Rosa that has been left out of the decision making for a very long time. We just engaged in a comprehensive study that showed that our Latino voters are systematically disenfranchised. They are not represented either on the council or in the decisions made by the city. So we had a ballot initiative 2 years ago that I stood firmly in support of, which was for district elections. This would have split up the city's elections, so each city council member would come from a certain part of town. Now that's just one part. That only guarantees geographic diversity. It doesn't guarantee diversity of age, ethnicity, race, gender, anything like that. So we have to take a holistic look at what we're doing to engage people in the political process. We have to establish a meaningful path to citizenship. And I want to also talk about, there's a law coming on the books January of next year that will allow everyone to apply for a driver's license regardless of citizenship in the United States. In the meantime, in Santa Rosa, I am working with our police chief to make sure that we do not continue the process of impounding vehicles of unlicensed drivers. It is an extraordinary impact on the life of a mom with 2 kids or someone trying to get to work to have their vehicle taken away from them. And until that law comes online, I'm working to make sure that that stops.
And I'll repeat the question. California has taken a leadership role in immigration reform. What, if any, changes to legislation or policy would you support, candidate Diona Conte?
Well, basically, we need to increase everything we're doing. I am first generation Italian. My father was born in Italy. My grandparents came here because they wanted better opportunity for their family, and they were able to get that. This country was founded on that whole principle of anybody who wants to come here is welcome. And we've forgotten that. And there's this kind of craziness that's going out there in the general public that's saying, you know, we can't do that. And the way immigration laws have been set up now, it's not logical consequences. There's not a reason for ICE raids. These are not people who are coming and committing crimes. There's something very crazy about this. You know, I think that welcoming people and bringing people in makes our culture richer and more diverse. And I don't see any evidence that immigrants are taking jobs away from non-immigrants, and we're all immigrants anyway, unless we're Native Americans. And I think that we have been systematically overreacting to this issue. I think that we need to pay attention to, it's extremely critical that we make a fast and efficient path to citizenship for immigrants that are coming into this community. It's great that they're getting the driver's license. It's great that we're working on getting them adequate medical care. All those things are good things, but it's not going far enough. We need to be able to get people on track to full citizenship so that they can fully participate in this without being in fear that their families are going to get torn apart in that way. That's not right. And it's over the top, and it's really not based on the reality of the situation. We really need to do something about it. I was executive director of the Nevada Human Needs Center. We had a lot of welcome programs for immigrants and people relocating. And I was also, as I said earlier, president of the Canal Community Alliance Board. So I've been working on these issues for quite a while. Thank you.
And now we're moving on social services topic. ¿Cuáles son los servicios sociales que necesitan mantenerse bajo las circunstancias de la crisis presupuestarial? ¿Y qué haría usted para sostener los fondos? What are the most important social services that need to be maintained in light of the budget crisis? And what would you do to sustain funding? And we'll start with Carlstrom, candidate Erin Karrstrom.
It's a hard name. Carlstrom, thank you. I mentioned in my opening that one of my first priorities will be passing single-payer health care. That's a health care system, not a health insurance system. It's going to be funded by a line item deduction on your payroll, on your check. Your paycheck. There we go. It's been a long week. Just like Social Security, just like unemployment insurance, I've talked to business owners who are delighted at the prospect because it's going to eliminate a huge burden from their HR department. And frankly, you know, in my business, I've got no business shopping for someone else's health insurance. So beginning with a single payer Medicare for all system, it's going to guarantee people can access the care that they need when they need it, and regardless of their employment status. We also have to be maintaining funding for our schools. That is where we begin to address the devastating income inequality, social inequality that is tearing apart our community. We are facing one of the largest concentrations of wealth that we have seen. It was 90% of the wealth in 2% of the pockets. If we can get people that basic level of a good public education, set everyone up on the same footing, that's a great start. That's going to begin to address that. The other services, of course, you know, we talk about, especially in this district, is public transportation. If people can't get to work, they can't earn money, they don't contribute to the economy, they can't feed their kids, they certainly can't afford to live here. So I'm very glad that the voters in this district voted to approve the Smart Line. I'm very hopeful that that will improve people's ability to get to and from work, get them off the roads, spending the money that we know it costs to own and maintain a vehicle. And I think we begin there, and there's my time.
So now, I'll repeat the question. What are the most important social services that need to be maintained in light of the budget crisis, and what will you do to sustain funding?
Okay, again, I'm Diona Conte, and as I mentioned in my opening, it's one of my top priorities to add back to the safety net. I've been running community-based nonprofits for more than 3 decades, and I've seen what's happened as it gets eroded. We basically cut back Health and Human Services in order to balance the budget. They've eliminated prevention and early intervention in a lot of areas of these service delivery systems. You can tighten the belt for a couple of years and then you're going to lose even more. If you stop the preventive services, you're going to end up with costlier problems down the road. If you cut back mental health services, educational opportunities, and substance abuse services, you are going to end up with more people in the prison system. That ends up costing the state even more, so you haven't really saved any money, and you've wasted lives, and there's no reason for that. We need to take a look at the entire Health and Human Services budget, and we need to add back what was taken away. And the state also did some things that were kind of sleight of hand, where they changed definitions in the Welfare and Institutions Code, so that those things that they were mandated to provide, they made the definition narrower. So there's fewer and fewer services. It's going to be bigger problems down the road. And as I mentioned earlier, the way we're going to fund that is, first thing is we're going to build back the rainy day fund a little more slowly so we can add back to critical health and human services. Then we're going to pass the oil extraction tax, close loopholes in Prop 13. So that means when there's transfers of commercial property, those properties would be reassessed. And it doesn't mean single family homes and people in their own homes doing that. And then we need to also look at extending Prop 30. So again, with Prop 13, an example of that is Safeway is about to get taken over by Albertsons. When all those properties change hands, they will not be reassessed. That's a lot of tax money, and that's a lot of unfairness. We need to close that loophole.
And that's the question goes for Gregory Allen.
Again, Gregory Allen. I think it's critical that we start to look at the infrastructure. We're having big problems here with water. We're going through a really dangerous drought situation. We've got reservoirs that are very, very shallow. We need to increase their capacity, because if we're going to bring more people into the area, we're going to have an infrastructure that can handle it. So I think it's critical that we look at that first and foremost. Education is critical, and I think that we need to find ways to incentivize corporations to train people in all levels of jobs, whether it be an engineer or be somebody right out of high school that can do some of these types of work that, again, are going to give them a good living wage, not a minimum wage, but a good solid wage that they can live on, and not just put hand to mouth. So I think it's critical that we find ways to raise the top so that we can have corporations that are interested in bringing anybody in, even if they don't have the skills right out the bat. So we need to find ways to have them do that. I think the education system is broken, like we talked about earlier, but I think that once we get people through that education system, we've got to find ways to put them into high-paying jobs so that they can pay for the taxes that's going to be required for all the social programs that we currently have. I mean, the reality is we're talking about tax and spend. We've got a supermajority in Sacramento, and all they're trying to do is put more weight on the backs of the property owners, tax them more because they think that somehow it's going to fix the problem. They've had plenty of time to do that, and obviously the problem still exists. So I would think that we need a different approach. We need to find some ways to, again, bring the corporations back, get these good paying jobs, and that way people can have an opportunity to live in the right way and not just survive. So I understand that. I've been in Marin my entire life except for my military service. It's very expensive to live here in Sonoma County, but it's doable if you have the right types of jobs, and it's not going to happen with a minimum wage. So we need to find better opportunities for people.
Now we're going to go to the next question, and this one has to do with tuition and fees. Las inscripciones y cuotas para la educación avanzada universitaria han aumentado drásticamente y los fondos han sido cortados. ¿Qué medidas podría proponer para lidiar con los elevados costos de inscripción en las preparatorias y universidades? Tuition and fees for public higher education have gone up dramatically, and funding has been cut down. What measures would you propose to address the skyrocketing cost of tuition in community colleges and state universities? And this round we start with candidate Diona Conte.
As I said earlier in my opening statement, it's really unconscionable what has happened. In 1985, tuition at community colleges was free. Community colleges were established to make sure everybody had access to affordable education. It is not affordable anymore. And the first thing we need to do, and one of my first priorities if I get elected, will be to roll back the recent fee increases at community colleges, CSUs, and UCs. It's become almost untenable for people to get a good education in this state. We're going to have to reinvest in it. We have to educate the general public so that they will support measures like the other taxes that I mentioned earlier and like extending Prop 30. We absolutely have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And so the question about tuition fees for public higher education, now candidate Allen, Gregory Allen.
Again, my wife Paul and I, we know firsthand. We just had our kids going through the college system. Our youngest graduated college just last year. So we got a kid in college for 8 straight years. The costs are exorbitant when you're talking about fees to get into college, but what's not discussed is the living fees. They got to have an apartment. They got to have insurance. They got to buy food. They got to pay rent. They got to pay utilities. That's where the big costs are. So if we undo Prop 13, the first thing that's going to happen is those rents are going to go up on everybody. The places where you live and the places where you work and where you shop and all those things. So we need to look at it from a different perspective. Yes, the fees have been growing, but I'm going to tell you firsthand, living expenses are much, much higher and they're never discussed. So I think it's critical that we ensure Proposition 13 is not taken apart. ACA number 8 is the first attempt by the legislature. Unfortunately, the Assemblyman is no longer here to tell you about this, but typically the Assembly is in session Monday through Thursday. For some reason, they went in session on a Friday, discussed ACA number 8, which is, again, raising the 2/3 majority, or lowering it, to 55%. They voted on it on a Saturday. Everybody thought they were coming back in on Monday. They did it on a Saturday. Why did they do that? Because nobody thought they would be there watching. So it's important for us to understand exactly what's happening with that. It's a critical part of why Californians are able to even live here. Without it, property taxes could be increased anywhere from 50 to 100% a year, and that's what happened prior to 1978 when it passed. It's critical that we maintain it. We understand where the costs are coming from. Living expenses, trust me, they're far higher than any fees you're going to pay at the university level.
So candidate Erin Karlstrom.
Thank you.
On the last name.
I struggle with it too. Erin Karlstrom, thank you. This is a really timely question. Reports have just recently been released that my generation and the generations behind me will soon be encumbered by $2 trillion in student loan debt. I can't even fathom that number. I don't even know how to say it in Spanish. But what people, and you know, we all gasp at that, but what we need to be understanding is that that level of debt encumbering an entire two generations means that when I go to work, when you go to work, you're not spending money in the economy. You're not investing. You're not saving. You're sending that money back to that student loan company. It's going to have a huge snowball impact on our economy in very short order. So how do we unpack the cost of public education, restore the constitutional guarantee here in California of no tuition for higher education? We do that through some of the tax measures that I've talked about before. I also want us to, as a state, take a look at our 3 strikes and mandatory minimum sentencing laws. It costs $70,000 per year to keep one person in state prison. If we can stop sending people to prison for needless 3 strikes or these grotesque mandatory minimums, we're going to free up more tax revenue that we should then turn around and reinvest in making our higher education institutions free, like the Constitution guarantees.
Okay, so now we're starting the order with candidate Gregory Allen. And this one is about pensions. And esta pregunta no fue traducida, pero está relacionada con la pensión. ¿Cómo van a lidiar con las pensiones que se dan a los empleados públicos? ¿Qué harán para reformarlo? ¿Y cómo van a mejorar el manejo y las leyes del manejo y la inversión en fondos de pensiones? So the question goes this way. How will you address public employee pension reform and improve the management and investment policies of pension funds?
Again, I'm Gregory Allen. I'm the only candidate in this race that signed a pledge for Citizens for a Sustainable Pension Plan. And the reason is, I think it's critical that we understand that plan is not going to, if we don't stop what's happening with pension plans, there's going to be no pensions left. So what's happened is there's been a lot of spiking where, for example, people will come in with a $100,000 a year salary, their last year on the job, they'll take vacation time, they'll take other time, overtime, and they'll kick it up to upwards of $150,000, and that's where they'll be paid for the remainder of their retirement. We can't allow that. That just doesn't make sense mathematically. So we need to make some adjustments. I also firmly believe that the people at the lower levels in these government jobs, they're not the ones that have the big problem. It's at the higher levels, it's the bureaucrats that are paying themselves, making sure that they take care of their friends, and they pay themselves all the way through their retirement. I also firmly believe that if we make a commitment to somebody, a promise made should be a promise kept, and we should make sure that we deal with that accordingly. So we're going to have to make changes, in my opinion, going forward, not for what's already been happening. So it's unfortunate what's happened. It's unfortunate that legislative branches have allowed it to occur. And when I'm in Sacramento, you send me there, I'll guarantee it's not going to happen anymore.
And we have a pension question for Holland. I'm sorry. Carlstrom.
Yes, that's Erin Karlstrom. The question is how are we going to improve the investment and management strategies of our public employee pensions? And it's a very large undertaking. We know that even at a local level, our pension liabilities are becoming colossal. In some areas, they are unsustainable. The buzzword gets thrown around a lot that these are unfunded liabilities. I kind of want to unpack that a little bit. Because, you know, when you take out a mortgage, those of you who may have been fortunate enough to do so, not me, your mortgage isn't due tomorrow, right? You make payments along the way, and if you keep up with those payments, you'll someday pay that off. The problem is that along the way, many communities, sometimes the state, were not keeping up with the payments. Santa Rosa, for example, took an employer vacation from contributing into our public employee system. So the legislature and the governor in 2010 and 2011 instituted 12 very reasonable reforms that have done away with some of the most egregious violations of sensible management. They've eliminated pension spiking. They have moved it to a 3-year average of your highest earning rather than your top, which is most likely your last year of working. They've eliminated the ability for employers to take vacations from their own contributions. So these very reasonable reforms have gone into place, and they need some time to come to fruition to have the impact on the communities that they need. We are seeing it already. I know in Santa Rosa in our fire department. And we do need to begin changing the tone of the conversation. We've made this all about these evil public employees. Well, you know, the average public employee earns a pension of just over $30,000 a year. That's not going to cut it here in Marin and Sonoma counties, quite frankly. So we need to be having a conversation about, are we allowing people to rely on the contracts that they've entered into and have a quality of life that's going to allow them to stay in these communities?
Now the same question about pensions for candidate Diona Conte.
So I'm Diona Conte, and I think that first and foremost, we need to be able to protect those pensions that are already in place. As other people have mentioned, most pensions are relatively modest. People worked hard, they put money aside, they earned those pensions, and they're counting on those pensions for their later years. We need to make sure that those are preserved and protected. We also need to remember that there is a problem with the sustainability of where the pensions are now, but it didn't come out of unbridled greed. It came out of a problem with Wall Street. So, you know, it doesn't help when this dialogue goes into just kind of blaming those who have a pension. It's, you know, we all have different kinds of perks with our employment. Some of us get pensions, some of us don't, some of us have higher salaries, some of us have lower salaries. It's all part of the package. And it isn't right to demonize or criticize those who have a pension. But we do have to figure out what we need to do going forward. And we need to remember that not all pension plans are the same. So a one-size-fits-all approach to solving it isn't going to work. We need to look down and look at the specifics. So again, stopping spiking, taking a look at any gold-plated pensions or any really high-level pensions are things that we can look at going forward. But I think we also need to take a look at having some kind of benchmarks for each pension plan to then be required to come up with what their solution is that's arrived at through the collective bargaining process. So it's working with the workers. So here's what we're going to do to address this. Here's the time frame and the parameters for that.
Well, it's wonderful at this time. We have a little bit of time left over, and we'd like to open it up to the audience and see if you have any questions at this time. Maybe Erica, Jimmy, you have a question? And we'll go ahead and have them answer it in 1-minute intervals. Please.
Well, CSPP, one of their founding members, is a union-busting attorney who's worth quite a bit of money. And I'm going to take a wild guess that most CSPP members are millionaires. So would you also put a cap on retirement holdings for all people, or just retirement caps on public employees?
Who starts?
Well, let's go ahead and start in reverse order with Conti.
Well, we need to take a look at a cap for the higher levels. I do think that's something that we need to pay attention to.
But should we have caps on private people too? Like, should there be a maximum wage? Should there be a maximum?
I think those are all
measures.
I think those are all measures we need to take a look at. I know there's some ideas being floated around about that, and I think those are. I don't know the specifics of it, but I think that's an idea well worth exploring.
Okay. Me, Erin.
I'm Erin Karlstrom. It's a great question. I don't think we want to punish someone for having had success in their life for making money. I hope someday to make money myself. But you know, I've heard a proposal brought to us at another forum that I think merits some discussion, which was for some of the giant corporations, you know, like the Walmarts. making it so that their top paid CEO can't earn more than 100 times what their lowest paid bagger or clerk would earn. Because, you know, that kind of works in that tension of you have to begin paying your people, you know, something they could live on, and you can't keep them down by rewarding yourself at a gross extent. So that's how I see it.
Great. Candidate Allen?
Yeah, again, Gregory Allen. I think that it's really important that we understand that, first of all, public employees are paid by the taxes of all of the citizens. Private employees are paid by whatever governing body they have within that company. You start a company and you do everything that's necessary to grow that company, hey, it's very tough to start a business. I can tell you, we missed many meals in trying to do it. So does that mean that when we have success at some point we got to cap that? I firmly disagree with that. I think that's important for us to allow freedom to take place. And people can do whatever they want within that type of a realm. But we're talking about public employees, and maybe we need to look at how they're going to be compensated, especially going forward with their retirements. Having served in the military, I can tell you that we had a plan where if you served 20 years in the military, you were going to get 50% of your base pay. If you served 30 years, you were going to get upwards of 75% of your base pay. Very few people get out of the military and are done working. They got to continue to work. 20 years of work is not normally enough to retire on. 30 years, getting closer. But I think it's critical that we understand the difference between what's public and what's private. Free enterprise on the private side is you can make as much as you can humanly make. If a company is, for example, public and they have stockholders, that's where that decision will be made at that point. Public employees, they're paying off our backs.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, and our timekeeper will take time for 1 minute questioning. And you have a question, sir?
I'd like to know, I mean, I'm very sensitive about the college education costs, especially since when I went to college, junior college was free, it really was. But what I have found really disturbing is the fact that the K to maybe 5th grade or whatever, those levels of teachers, they're having to buy out of their own pockets school materials for their classroom. And I don't even think they get a tax break for it or anything. I mean, when can that be stopped and brought back to the old way of, the school takes care of supplying the stuff instead of the teachers?
So the question is, will you give tax breaks to teachers?
Well, not necessarily tax breaks, but let's just get it back to the way it was instead of because, the tax breaks are nice, but, that's still taking money out of the teacher's paycheck every
Yes,
2 weeks or
yes.
something.
So the question is, how do we get back on track with extra funds for primary school
Right.
supplies? And 1 minute, please. And we'll start with Erin Karlstrom.
Okay. Hopefully you've heard my commitment to restoring funding for our public primary schools. We're going to begin addressing that by implementing the split roll on Prop 13, get those corporate tax dollars flowing in. We're going to implement the offshore oil extraction fee that's, again, projected to generate $2 billion in revenue, much of which will go into our schools. I want to look at reforming our 3 strikes and mandatory minimums. All of this is generating more funding, and we have to make education, and especially our lower years, our early years, a huge priority. I have a number of friends that are teachers. They are buying those supplies, and they're doing it out of love because they love their students. They know what it takes to succeed. But as a state, we have to be helping that teacher succeed, because if the teacher can't succeed, the students that they are responsible for are going to have a tougher time succeeding. That's why I'm proposing looking even earlier than kindergarten to those first 5 years that have historically been funded through tobacco tax, cigarette tax, and thankfully people are smoking less, but the revenues for those programs have also gone down. So we need to be recommitting there as well.
Candidate Allen?
Yeah, again, I'm Gregory Allen. I was born and raised here in Marin, so I know about these school systems here. I went through them myself, all the way from K through 12. I went to Marin Catholic High School and also finished at Nevada High School. I don't remember a time necessarily where this money was there for students, or there was free things that was provided for them. I remember our parents still contributing into those classrooms that I was in. So I don't necessarily know of a time that that's taken place. But getting back to what I was talking about earlier, only 60 cents of every education dollar gets to that classroom. The reason that's the case is because bureaucracies have created big lines that are highly paid jobs on the top that don't have anything to do with the education of the students. That, I think, is where we need to look at it. And again, I also think that the teachers, we have a lot of success in math and science with the charter schools. Their test scores are far better. We need to look at that, and we also want to make sure that those teachers that are doing a good job are rewarded. If they're in the union, what will happen is that if there's a cutback, it's going to be the first teachers that are in that are cut, and the ones that have been there the longest are going to stay They're going to stay on. We need to look at who's performing and pay those people to stay on.
Now we're going to move to closing statements.
Oh, candidate Conti, I'm
excuse
sorry.
me.
Candidate Conti, please.
All right. I also have friends who are teachers who had to do just that. They had to get there early and get the books that were there, and then they had to pay for it themselves. With the new local control funding formulas that are being proposed, the theory is that some of the lower income communities will get more, and that'll help a little bit. The higher income communities, they're going out to parents, and the parents are raising the money. But that's still not solving the problem. We need to reinvest in education. It's really kind of shameful what we're doing, that we're not paying attention to that. There's also talk about universal preschool, because right now the kids can't make it in school if they haven't been through preschool, and parents are having to fund that out of their pocket, and a lot of parents can't provide it. So those who don't get it are coming in behind when they're starting, and it's really not okay. So as I mentioned earlier, rolling back the fee increases at public colleges, and so that, again, closing the loopholes in Prop 13, extending Prop 30, getting the oil extraction tax, and I think we need to take a look at new sin taxes like marijuana that's probably going to end up being legal.
Okay.
And so we need to tax it and regulate it, and that's another revenue stream.
Thank you, candidate Conti. We had a request for one more question from Erica Erickson from Marin Grassroots, and we'll go ahead and have your answers at 30 seconds. Timekeeper, are you ready?
Yeah, that will be tough.
The last round.
I am on the planning commission for Marin County, and I want to know your opinion about AB 1537, introduced by Assemblyman Marc Levine, that basically would change the designation of Marin County and some cities from metropolitan to suburban, and lower the required density for affordable housing sites. I would like to know your opinion about it.
And we'll start with candidate Allen.
Yeah, Gregory Allen. That's a big issue, and that's something that I've been watching. I've been in all the city council meetings that I could attend here recently. The control is from ABAG, and ABAG is all about high-density housing. Marin County currently has less than 7 units per acre, and Marc Levine is talking about lowering the threshold to 20 from the 30 that's proposed by ABAG. So I think everybody needs to understand that these high-density units are popping up like Windcup and Corte Madera, 900 units in Larkspur, 2,000 units to be projected in Novato, and every other city in the county and the district to the north is going to have these houses. It's tough because the infrastructure can't handle it. Water, sewer, power, it can't handle it. It's not made for this. So I think we need to stop it.
30 seconds is not a long time. Okay.
Especially for this issue.
Exactly.
It's a big issue.
Am I next?
Carlstrom.
So in brief, I supported that initiative. Marin County was designated metropolitan due to proximity with San Francisco. Sonoma County, by contrast, was designated as suburban, despite the fact that we're roughly twice the size. So I think reclassifying it, lowering the density, it was a very smart move. Unfortunately, I believe that it has been stalled in the assembly. So that's a question of being able to bring your other assembly members along to explain that this is really what's important in keeping the tone of your community and protecting the quality of the character. Affordable housing is very important, but we need to be building smart projects.
Thank you. Candidate Conti?
I support the legislation. I think it's a good start. It's not going to solve all the problems here in Marin. Affordable housing is a huge, huge issue. The high density plan doesn't work for us on a variety of levels. for traffic, for quality of life, for water hookups, for all kinds of things. So this is a good start, but it really is time for us to sit down and bring together advocates from across the spectrum to figure out, okay, if it's not there, what are we going to do about really getting affordable housing in Marin, other than assuming all our affordable housing is coming from Sonoma County.
Thank you very much. We'll have to visit their websites to learn more on their position on affordable housing. So I'd like to thank everyone for coming today. And I'd also like to announce that we'll have live election night coverage at the Media Center on Channel 27 and CMCM streaming live from 8 until 10:30 p.m. So I'm Vita Flores, one of the organizers with Dario Dorigo. Would you like to say a few words?
Yes, again, at this time, CMCN, the public access here in Marin County, covered all this election day. And thank you for coming too. You guys, all the voice again, the first time I'm introducing, you know, all the special Latino community waiting for all your answers and everything. And thank you for coming, everybody.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.